one thing I need to pass across is that we need to be optimistic. We need to realize that we have what it takes to fight the disease and overcome it. So we can beat the disease. But as we say that, that does not mean we should rest on our oars, because what we are also seeing now is that we have had people who have been discharged, as in they've had the COVID-19 disease, they've been treated, they've been discharged, they've gone home, and they are coming down again with a reinfection. So saying that you've had it once means you won't have it again is foolhardy. We need to keep on protecting ourselves. We need to make hand hygiene a culture, make hand hygiene a way of life. Ensure that you constantly wash your hands. Something as simple and as cheap as washing of your hands has been shown to be able to hold at bay COVID-19 amidst other things. We need to also boost our immunity. Take a lot of vitamins, a lot of fruits and vegetables. Do some form of exercise, walking around, dancing if you love to dance, swimming where you can, cycling, exercise to keep your body in check. Now, COVID has an affiliation for the extremes of ages, the very old or the very young. People with underlying ailments like diabetes, hypertension are susceptible to coming down with COVID-19 and not recovering as speedily as you otherwise would. That is not to say that if you are strong and healthy that you cannot come down with COVID-19, but these are the people that are more prone to coming down with COVID-19 and more prone to dying of the infection. So, boost your immunity. Stay strong, stay optimistic, stay calm. Do not panic. Read what you have on social media, but please let your senses also be intact as you read those things, because there's a lot of things on social media right now, a lot of them not true. Yes, we hear that chloroquine is one of the drugs of choice for treatment of COVID virus, but this is still a drug that we are looking at and we're working with, and we're seeing results, but it's not all hooray. So it's not enough for you to go and start to drink chloroquine to say that you want to prevent it. Chloroquine is not preventive. It's supposed to be one of the drugs of choice for treatment of people who have the virus. Yes, it is an anti-malaria used for a bacteria, but studies have shown that it has some effect, some impact on the virus, and so it is one of the drugs of choice that is being used. Azithromycin is also another antibacterial that is being used to prevent possible superimposed bacterial infections. We're saying take vitamin C as well as zinc, but these are drugs for treatment. For prevention, please, hand hygiene, do not go to overcrowded places, practice your social distancing, cough into the crook of your elbow or into your shirt, stay home, self-isolate. In Lagos, for instance, we're seeing that we have a lot of community spread where someone who has not traveled outside the shores of Nigeria before is coming down with COVID-19 because he has had contact with someone who has had contact with someone who has had contact with someone who has possibly traveled. One way to limit all of these contacts is to restrict movement. One way to restrict movement is for the government to say categorically, you cannot move from one place to the other. Now, that is being done. We can only appeal to the people by constant sensitization and education that they need to observe these restrictions. As for the marketplaces, it's difficult. It's going to be very difficult for us to say social distancing within the marketplaces because of how our markets are in Nigeria. People need to feed, so they must go out to get food. So we cannot shut down the markets completely. But hopefully, as people begin to take on board and begin to realize the import of what the COVID-19 epidemic is all about, or pandemic rather, is all about, then they begin to consciously change the way they do things. Now, all of this is not going to happen in a day. It takes time. One thing I hope that will come out of this COVID-19 pandemic is that Nigerians begin to build a culture of cleanliness, a culture of hygiene, where we begin to realize that hand hygiene is supposed to be a way of life. It is something that is good, it's important, needs to be done. If we look at the countries that have been infected worldwide, we will see that countries that have reduced rates of deaths are people who culturally practice these things. Take Japan, for instance. As a culture, they tend to cover their mouths, especially when they have a cold, so that they're not transmitting to one another. They're keeping it to themselves. So these are things we need to begin to put on board. And if you're going to wear a face mask, for instance, right? You don't wear the face mask, take it off and put it on top of your head and then use your hands all over it. You've already contaminated yourself by doing all of that. So if you have a face mask in place, leave it on till you get to where you want to discard it, and please discard it in a bin that is covered. Try to resist touching your face. Why do we say that? We believe that the virus is spread by droplet secretion, and as I'm talking, droplets are coming out. So your hands get contaminated. You then use these hands to touch your nose, your eye, your mouth. These are areas wherein the virus can enter into the body, and then you get infected. So if you reduce touching your face with your hands, then you can also reduce transmission. So people will have to begin to consciously take on board these actions and begin to make them a way of life. That is the only way we can actively begin to sort out the scourge that we're dealing with. So it's a mind change, is what we call a behavioral change modification. It will take time, but it is doable.